McKenna's hands won't stop shaking. Not from fear, from counting. 7 names in 3 weeks. 7 funerals where they folded flags and said pilot error like it meant something other than we don't know, or worse, we know but can't admit it. August 17, 1943. Doba Doura Airfield, New Guinea. 5th Air Force, 49th Fighter Group, 9th Fighter Squadron. 53 Lockheed P-38J. Lightning fighters valued at $97, $147 each. 18 operational pilots. 23% loss rate in 30 days. The highest in the Pacific Theater. The manual says pilot error. The pilots say something's wrong. McKenna knows the manual is lying. He kneels under P-38 Lightning serial number 4328432 at 0547 hours, and his fingers find the control cable junction by muscle memory. Pull left. 1/4 inch of slack before resistance. Pull right. Same deadly 1/4 inch. He closes his eyes and sees Danny Reeves's face the night before he died, 22 years old, showing off pictures of his fiancée talking about opening a garage in Phoenix after the war. There won't be a garage. There won't be an after, because this cable killed him. Sergeant. McKenna jerks upright, cracks his head on the wing root. Pain explodes white behind his eyes. When his vision clears, Lieutenant Robert Hayes is standing there. 23 flight suit zipped, trying to look confident and failing. "Morning, sir." McKenna tastes copper, touches his scalp, blood on his fingers. She's ready. Hayes doesn't move toward the cockpit, just stares at the aircraft like it might bite him. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes, sir." "You ever feel like—" Hayes stops, starts again. "When I roll, there's this delay, like I turn the stick and the plane hesitates, just a heartbeat. But at 400 miles per hour, a heartbeat's enough to die." The words come out harder than McKenna intended. Hayes's face goes pale. "Jesus, so it's not just me." McKenna should say, "Yes, sir. It's just you. You need more training. Follow the manual, trust the system." That's what the regulations say, what his stripes say, what 23 years of service says. Instead, he spits blood into the dust. "Get down here, Lieutenant." Hayes drops to his knees. McKenna grabs the control cable, yanks it sideways. The 1/4 inch of slack moves like a living thing, invisible on paper, deadly in air. "You see this?" McKenna's voice shakes. "Manual says 1/16 inch total slack. Factory fresh, that's true. Lockheed tested 12 P-38s in Burbank, California. 70-degree weather. 40% humidity. 2 weeks of testing." He pulls the cable again. "We're flying them in 100-degree heat with 80% humidity. Cables stretch. Fair leads wear. Pulleys corrode. And that 1/16 becomes 1/8 becomes a 1/4 inch. Maybe more." Hayes wraps his hand around the cable. Tests it himself. His pilot's brain is doing the math, distance to time to angles to survival. Torres died 3 days ago. They said he failed to evade. Said he was too slow in the roll. Torres had 240 hours in type. He wasn't slow. His plane was. Hayes stands. Walks 10 feet away. Turns back. "Does Hendricks know?" "I've filed 3 reports. Squadron commander said I was speculating beyond my expertise. Group maintenance said the cables meet spec. Lockheed's field rep measured the slack on Major Hendricks's personal aircraft, the one that never flies combat, found it within tolerance. Wrote a memo saying, 'System operates as designed.'" McKenna stands, wipes blood from his forehead. "They measured the wrong plane and called it science." Hayes's jaw tightens. "So 7 men died because nobody wanted to admit the plane might be flawed. Easier to blame dead pilots. Can't defend themselves. Christ." Hayes looks at his hands, at the P-38, at McKenna. "What do we do?" McKenna reaches into his pocket. His fingers find the piano wire 6 inches long, bent into a Z shape sharp enough to cut. He's been carrying it for 4 days, waiting, hoping someone would ask the right question. We cheat. McKenna leads Hayes to a workbench in the back corner, doesn't speak, just picks up a piece of music wire. 0.41-inch diameter tensile strength, 400,000 pounds per square inch, salvaged from a destroyed Navy SBD Dauntless 3 months ago. He bends it with needle-nose pliers. 6 inches. Perfect Z shape. His hands know the motion now. He's practiced it 50 times. He forces the wire into a practice cable, weaving it through the steel strands until it locks. Tugs left. Instant response. Tugs right. 0 slack. Piano wire, he says. Before the war, this was in a concert hall. Costs 12 cents. Know what your plane costs? $97,000. We're losing $100,000 fighters because Lockheed saved 15 cents on cable tension. Hayes reaches out, tests the cable himself. Pull. Immediate resistance. Pull again. No delay. His eyes widen. Jesus Christ, this is how long have you known? 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Hayes's voice rises. Why didn't you? I found it in Danny Reeves's wreckage. The name hits like a fist. Hayes goes still. You found what? Piano wire. Already installed. Danny figured it out himself. Modified his own aircraft without authorization. McKenna picks up another piece of wire, turns it in his fingers. It worked too, I checked. His ailerons were responding perfectly when he died. The 0 still got him, but not because of the slack. He had a chance. Hayes sits on the workbench, hard, like his legs stopped working. Why didn't you report this? Report what? That I found an unauthorized modification and think it's brilliant they'd court-martial Danny posthumously. Court-martial me for suggesting we use it, ban the modification, and we'd go back to flying with the slack that's killing us. McKenna's voice drops. Or I could shut up, install the wire, save lives, and spend the rest of mine praying nobody finds out. If it fails, if this wire breaks or causes a problem we haven't thought of, you crash, I get charged with manslaughter. And if it works, we can't tell anyone. Both get court-martialed anyway. Hayes stands, paces. His boots echo on concrete. When he turns back, something in his face has changed, hardened. How many pilots you think this could save? In this squadron, maybe 15. Across the Pacific, 8th Air Force in Europe is losing 5% monthly. We're losing 23%. If it's the cables, hundreds, maybe more. And if we don't do it, they keep dying, and we keep calling it pilot error. Hayes walks to the hangar entrance, stares at the flight line where 53 P-38s wait like promises America can't keep. When he turns back, his jaw is set. How long does installation take? 48 minutes, plus 10 for safety check. Can you do it tonight? Already planning on it. Hayes extends his hand. McKenna shakes it. The lieutenant's palm is dry, steady. The hand of someone who's just decided regulations matter less than lives. One condition. If I make it back tomorrow, if this works, we tell the other mechanics, quietly. We spread it to every P-38 in the squadron. That's not a condition. That's a conspiracy. Good. Then we're conspirators. After Hayes leaves, McKenna pulls out his notebook, oil-stained, dog-eared, the only evidence that might matter. He opens to the first page. Lieutenant Danny Reeves, age 22, August 3, 1943. Cable slack measured 0.24 inches. Page 2. Captain Michael Torres, age 26, August 14, 1943. Cable slack 0.28 inches. 7 pages. 7 names. 7 measurements that nobody wanted to see. He turns to page 8. Blank. Writes Lieutenant Robert Hayes, age 23. Then crosses it out hard enough to tear the paper. Not you. Not today. Movement catches his eye. Staff Sergeant Raymond Cooper stands 30 feet away near the parts crib. Watching. How long has he been there? How much did he hear? Their eyes meet. Cooper is 41 career Air Force, 23 years of following every regulation and questioning none. His face reveals nothing. Then he nods. Once. Slow. Deliberate. The nod says everything. I won't report you. But I won't help you either. You're on your own. Cooper returns to inventory. McKenna closes the notebook. His hands are shaking again. 2,200 hours. The airfield sleeps. McKenna works by flashlight, the beam taped to narrow so it won't be seen. P-38 Lightning, 43-28432 looms above him. He opens the access panel behind the cockpit. The control cables run through here, 4 of them. 2 for ailerons, 2 for elevator. His hands know every inch. He's serviced this system 100 times. But never like this. He pulls out the first piece of piano wire, 6 inches, Z-shaped, sharp. His thumb is already bleeding from where he cut it earlier. Good. Means the wire won't slip. He forces it into the aileron cable, weaving it through the steel strands. It fights him, doesn't want to go, doesn't want to lock. Sweat drips into his eyes. His hands cramp. For a moment, he thinks it won't work, that Danny's wire was a fluke, that he's about to ruin a perfectly good aircraft and guarantee Hayes dies tomorrow. Then it clicks. Locks. Holds. He tugs the cable. 0 slack. Perfect tension. His heart hammers so hard he can hear it. 1 down. 3 to go. The second wire goes easier. Muscle memory kicking in. Third one even faster. By the fourth, his hands move automatically. Bend weave lock test. 12 minutes each. Just like he calculated. He's closing the access panel when footsteps crunch on gravel behind him. McKenna spins. The flashlight beam swings wild, catches a face. Staff Sergeant Raymond Cooper. For 3 seconds, neither man moves. Cooper stares at the open panel. At the tools in McKenna's hands. At the notebook lying on the ground where McKenna dropped it. You're working late. Voice flat. Unreadable. Routine maintenance. At 2,200 hours. Couldn't sleep. Cooper walks closer. Looks at the access panel. At the control cables visible inside. At McKenna's bloody thumb. You cut yourself. Slipped. On what? McKenna doesn't answer. Can't. His brain is screaming calculations, how fast he can run, whether Cooper will report this immediately or wait until morning, whether there's any possible explanation that doesn't end in court-martial. Cooper reaches into his pocket. McKenna tenses. But Cooper doesn't pull out a radio or a weapon. He pulls out a handkerchief, hands it to McKenna. Wrap that thumb, blood's dripping on the airframe. McKenna takes the handkerchief, wraps his thumb, doesn't break eye contact. You going to report me? Cooper looks at the P-38, at the closed access panel, at McKenna. Report what I came to check inventory. Saw you doing routine maintenance. Noticed you cut yourself. He turns to leave. Stops. One thing, though. Sir. Whatever you're doing, you better be damn sure it works. Because if Hayes crashes tomorrow, I'll testify I saw you tampering with his aircraft. Understood. But if he doesn't crash, if he comes back and says his plane handled different, handled better, then maybe I'll start seeing things. Maybe I'll start noticing slack in other cables. Maybe I'll remember where I left a coil of piano wire near the workbench. You understand? McKenna's throat tightens. Yes, sir. Cooper walks away, disappears into darkness. McKenna leans against the P-38's landing gear. His legs won't hold him. His hands shake so badly he can barely close his toolbox. He just committed 16 regulation violations. And the only witness who knows just offered to help if it works, or destroy him if it doesn't. 0430 hours. McKenna hasn't slept. He stands on the flight line, watching dawn paint the sky red. In 90 minutes, Hayes will climb into 43-28432. In 2 hours, the modification will either save his life or become evidence at McKenna's court-martial. Footsteps behind him. Couldn't sleep either. Hayes's voice. Rough. Tired. No, sir. They stand side by side, not speaking, just watching the light grow. You install it? Hayes finally asks. Yes, sir. All 4 cables? Yes, sir. How long did it take? 48 minutes, like I said. Hayes nods. Doesn't look at McKenna. If I die today, if this fails, it's not your fault. I asked you to do it. I wanted it done. Respectfully, sir, that won't matter at the court-martial. No, I suppose it won't. Hayes turns, looks at McKenna straight on. But I'd rather die trying something new than die doing what killed 7 men before me. Yes, sir? And if it works? Then we spread it, quietly. Every P-38 in the squadron. Hayes smiles, thin, tired. We're either heroes or criminals, Sergeant. Usually both, sir. 0600 hours. Pilots walk to their aircraft. Ground crews make final checks. McKenna watches Hayes climb into 43 to 28432's cockpit strap, in-go through pre-flight. From this distance, the piano wire is invisible. The modification undetectable. Everything looks normal. But normal is what's been killing them. Hayes gives thumbs up, starts engines. The Allisons roar to life, twin 12-cylinder screams that shake the ground. McKenna feels it in his chest, in his teeth, in the place where fear and hope become the same thing. The P-38 taxis, rolls onto the runway, powers up, and lifts. McKenna watches until it's a speck against clouds, until it disappears into the sky that's been killing its own for months. He checks his watch. 0614 hours. If the modification works, Hayes will return around 0900. If it fails, the crash site recovery team launches at 1000. 3 hours and 46 minutes to find out if he's a hero or a murderer. McKenna walks to the maintenance hangar, picks up a wrench, pretends to work on an engine. His hands move automatically while his brain counts seconds. Cooper walks past, doesn't speak, just leaves a coil of piano wire on the workbench. 600 feet. Enough for 100 modifications. Enough to save the air raid siren screams. Incoming. Zeros. The patrol engaged early. McKenna drops the wire. Runs to the flight line. Ground crews scramble for cover. Anti-aircraft guns swing toward the sky. But McKenna just stands there searching clouds for the twin-boom silhouette that might or might not be coming home. The radio in the operations tent crackles to life. Static. Voices. Combat chatter. Engaged, 18 zeros, altitude 12,000. Morrison brake, right. On my 6, can't shake him. Then Hayes's voice. Young. Terrified. Alive. Rolling left. Jesus Christ, it's responding. I'm inside his turn. Guns. The distinct chatter of 50 caliber fire through radio. Scratch 10, I got him. He couldn't follow the roll. McKenna's knees buckle. He sits on the tarmac hard, doesn't care who sees, doesn't care about regulations or rank, or anything except that voice on the radio, still talking, still alive, still, engaging, second target, rolling inverted. More gunfire. That's 2. Morrison, the plane's different, it's rolling faster than it should. Captain Morrison's voice. What the hell did you do to your aircraft, Hayes? I don't know, sir, but it's working. McKenna starts laughing. Can't help it. Can't stop. Laughing or crying or both while ground crews stare at him like he's lost his mind. Maybe he has. But Hayes is alive, and the wire worked. 0847 hours. P-38, Lightning, 43-28432 touches down. Hayes taxis to hardstand, shuts down engines, sits in the cockpit for a full minute before climbing out. Legs shaking, flight suit soaked with sweat, face pale, except for 2 red marks where his oxygen mask pressed. McKenna walks over, says nothing, just looks at the aircraft checking for damage. 3 zeros, Hayes says, voice hoarse. I shot down 3 zeros. Good shooting, sir. No. Hayes grabs McKenna's shoulder, grips hard. You don't understand. I outturned them. I rolled inside a zero's turning circle. That's impossible. That's... He stops, swallows. That's your wire. Sir, I don't know what. Don't play dumb. Not now. Morrison saw it. He's in the operations tent right now telling Hendricks something's different about my plane. They're going to inspect it. McKenna's blood goes cold. Hour, maybe less. Hayes releases his shoulder. So, you need to make a choice. Right now. Do we remove the wire and pretend it never happened? Or do we let them find it and deal with the consequences? McKenna thinks about Cooper's wire on the workbench. 52 more aircraft waiting. 7 names in his notebook. 7 more next month if nothing changes. 3 zeros, McKenna says. In 7 minutes. How'd it feel? Hayes closes his eyes. Like flying a different plane. Like the P-38 I thought I was supposed to have all along. McKenna makes his decision. Let them find it. You sure? No, but I'm sure about what happens if we don't try. Hayes nods, turns toward operations, stops. Sergeant, thank you. Don't thank me yet, sir. Thank me when we're not in prison. McKenna watches Hayes walk away. Then he returns to the maintenance hangar where Cooper's wire waits, and 52 more aircraft need modifications that might save hundreds of lives or end 2 careers. He picks up the wire, feels its weight, opens his notebook, turns to page 8, crosses out Lieutenant Hayes's name completely, writes underneath August 17, 1943, modification successful. 3 confirmed kills, 0 failures. He turns to page 9, writes, Aircraft number 243-28447. Installation begins 1400 hours. Because somewhere in the Pacific, more zeros are taking off. More pilots are strapping into P-38s with fatal slack in their controls. More mothers are about to get telegrams. Unless... McKenna pulls out the piano wire, measures 6 inches, bends it into a Z shape, and gets back to work. Because sometimes the only way to serve your country is to break its rules. And sometimes history forgets the names of the men who saved it. But the men they saved remember. 1400 hours. McKenna kneels beside P-38 number 43-28447. His hands don't shake anymore. That stopped after Hayes landed. Now they move with the precision of someone who's crossed a line and found solid ground on the other side. Staff Sergeant Raymond Cooper stands 10 feet away, pretending to inventory spark plugs while actually standing guard. They haven't spoken since last night. Don't need to. The access panel comes off in 40 seconds. McKenna's done this 3 times now, once on Hayes's plane, twice more this morning, while the officers held their emergency meeting about unexplained performance improvements. His fingers find the aileron cable. 1/4-inch slack. Always 1/4-inch. Like Lockheed built it into every aircraft as a gift to the Japanese. He pulls out the piano wire. 6 inches. Z-shaped. 12 cents worth of metal that might be worth more than the $97,147 aircraft it's going into. Bend, weave, lock, test. 11 minutes. He's getting faster. The second cable takes 9. Third takes 8. By the fourth, his hands move like they're playing an instrument, which, in a way, they are. Piano wire. Concert halls to cockpits. Mozart to murder prevention. Sergeant McKenna. The voice comes from directly behind him, not Cooper's voice. Major Samuel Hendricks. Squadron Commander. The man whose personal P-38 has perfect cable tension because it never flies. Combat never sits in jungle humidity, never accumulates the microscopic wear that turns specifications into death sentences. McKenna doesn't turn around. Just keeps working. Finishes the installation. Closes the panel. Only then does he stand salute. Sir. Hendricks is 42 West Point, 3 rows of ribbons that say he flew in peacetime when the enemy was weather and mechanical failure, not 20mm cannons. His face is red, not from heat, from rage barely contained by rank and regulation. I want you to explain something to me, Sergeant. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Hayes filed his after-action report an hour ago. Claims his aircraft exhibited, and I'm quoting here, improved roll response allowing pursuit through maneuvers previously considered impossible for P-38 airframes. Hendricks steps closer. Captain Morrison filed a similar report. Says Hayes's plane was rolling faster than physics should allow. Says it looked like a different aircraft. That's good news, sir? Good news. Hendrix's voice rises. Good news, I have 2 pilots claiming their equipment performed outside specifications. I have Lockheed's field rep demanding to inspect the aircraft, and I have you. He jabs a finger at McKenna's chest. Working on another plane when you should be preparing Hayes's aircraft for inspection. McKenna meets his eyes, doesn't blink. Hayes's aircraft is ready for inspection, sir. Nothing wrong with it. Then explain the performance improvement. Can't explain it, sir, but I can measure it. Aircraft 43-228432 now has 0 slack in control cables. Responds instantly to pilot input, exactly as designed. Cables were within specification before the mission. Respectfully, sir, they weren't. I measured 1/4 inch slack, filed a report. You remember the one where you said I was speculating beyond my expertise? The red in Hendrix's face deepens to purple. For a moment, McKenna thinks he's about to be struck. Doesn't care. 7 names in a notebook. 3 zeros shot down. The math is simple, even if the regulations aren't. I want that aircraft torn down, Hendrix says. Every panel, every cable, every fastener. If there's an unauthorized modification. There's 4 unauthorized modifications, sir. McKenna's voice is calm, steady. The voice of a man who's already decided prison is preferable to complicity. 4 pieces of piano wire, installed at 2200 hours last night. Each one preloads the control cables to eliminate slack. Total cost 48 cents. Total improvement, 3 enemy aircraft destroyed, 1 pilot alive who might otherwise be dead. The silence stretches. Somewhere across the airfield, an engine starts. Dies. Starts again. The daily struggle of keeping 1943 technology functioning in 1943. Jungle humidity, with 1943 supply chains that prioritize Europe over Pacific, because Europe is where the newsreels focus, and the Pacific is where pilots die in obscurity. You're admitting to unauthorized modification of military equipment. Hendrix's voice has gone quiet. Dangerous quiet. Yes, sir. You understand that's court-martial. Minimum 5 years military prison. Possible dishonorable discharge. Yes, sir. You understand, I have no choice but to. You have every choice, sir. The interruption lands like a slap. Officers don't get interrupted. Especially not by enlisted men. Especially not by enlisted men who've just confessed to crimes. But McKenna keeps talking because the only thing worse than prison is silence. You can court-martial me, file charges, make an example. And tomorrow 18 pilots will strap into P-38s with 1/4 inch slack in their cables. And next week, we'll have 8 names in the casualty log instead of 7. And the week after that, 10. And Lockheed will keep saying the planes meet specification. And you'll keep blaming pilot error. And the zeros will keep winning. Or, Hendrix's jaw is so tight McKenna can see the muscle jumping. Or you can inspect Hayes's aircraft. Measure the response time. Check the kill ratio. And then you can make a command decision about whether regulations matter more than results. McKenna gestures at the P-38 behind him. I've got 52 more aircraft to modify. Takes me about 48 minutes each. I can have the entire squadron done in 4 days. Work mostly at night so nobody sees, nobody knows. Nobody gets blamed except me if something goes wrong. And if I order you to stop, then I stop. And I watch good men die. And I live with that. McKenna's voice drops. But you'll have to live with it too, sir. Every funeral, every flag, every letter to mothers explaining their sons died from pilot error when you knew there was a fix. Hendrix turns away. Stares at the flight line where 49 more P-38s wait for modifications that aren't authorized by any manual, aren't approved by any engineer, aren't sanctioned by any regulation except the one that says, keeping soldiers alive matters more than keeping paperwork clean. When he turns back, something in his face has shifted. Not softer, but different. The look of a man who's just realized that command isn't about following rules, it's about choosing which rules to break and living with the consequences. "I didn't see anything," Hendricks says. "What, sir?" "I came to check on aircraft serviceability. Found you performing routine maintenance. Noticed you cut your thumb." He points at McKenna's bandaged hand. "I ordered you to get that checked at the aid station. You're dismissed." McKenna doesn't move. Doesn't trust what he's hearing. "Sir, I just told you. You told me you're performing routine maintenance. That's what I'll tell the Lockheed rep. That's what goes in my log." Hendricks steps closer, lowers his voice. "But understand this, Sergeant. If one aircraft crashes because of your modification, I will personally testify that you acted without authorization. I will burn you so thoroughly, your grandchildren will feel the heat. Clear?" "Crystal, sir." "And if it works, if we start seeing improved performance across the squadron, then maybe, just maybe, someone will notice that cable tension specifications need revision for tropical operations." Hendricks's mouth twitches. Not quite a smile. Someone with enough rank to make it official. He walks away. 10 steps. Stops. Doesn't turn around. "Sergeant?" "Sir." "Hayes got 3 zeros in 7 minutes. Squadron record is 2 in 15. Whatever you did to his plane." Hendricks pauses. "Routine maintenance looks good on you." Then he's gone. McKenna stands there, wrench in hand, authorization he didn't ask for and can't acknowledge. Cooper walks over, no longer pretending to inventory spark plugs. "Well," Cooper says, "that was interesting. That was insane. That was command." Cooper picks up the coil of piano wire. "How many more aircraft we doing today?" "We." "You think I'm letting you have all the fun? Besides, 2 mechanics work twice as fast. We can do 4 aircraft by midnight." McKenna looks at Cooper, 41 years old. 23 years of service, a man who spent his entire career following regulations and is now offering to violate 16 of them before bedtime. "Why?" McKenna asks. "Why help now?" Cooper is quiet for a moment. Then, "My son's a pilot. Flew B-17s over Germany. Got shot down 3 months ago. Bailed out, captured, now he's in a POW camp somewhere." He meets McKenna's eyes. "I spent 23 years following rules. And you know what that got me? A telegram saying my boy's alive, but I can't help him. Can't fix his plane. Can't make his bombs more accurate. Can't do anything except follow more rules and hope someone else's son makes it home." He holds up the piano wire. "But here, now I can fix something. Can't save my son, but maybe I can save someone else's." His voice cracks. "That's worth court-martial. That's worth anything." McKenna takes the wire, nods. Can't speak past the knot in his throat. They work in silence after that. 2 mechanics, 4 aircraft, 48 cents and 48 minutes per plane. By 1800 hours, 6 P-38s have been modified. By 2100 hours, 10. By midnight, 14. They work by flashlight, speaking in whispers, moving like ghosts through an airfield that's learned not to ask questions when aircraft start performing better than specifications say they should. August 18th, 0600 hours. 12 P-38s launch on morning patrol. 8 have been modified, 4 haven't. The pilots don't know which is which. Neither do the ground crews. But McKenna watches from the flight line, notebook in hand, tracking serial numbers like a gambler counting cards. Aircraft 43-28432, modified. Hayes flying. Aircraft 43-28447, modified. Lieutenant Marcus Chen flying. Aircraft 43-28451, modified. Captain James Morrison flying. Aircraft 43-28439, unmodified. Lieutenant Paul Stevens flying. The test group versus the control group. Science conducted at 15,000 feet, where failure means death and success means survival, and nobody gets to file for peer review. 0843 hours. Radio chatter. Contact. 15 zeros. Altitude 14,000. Morrison's voice. Calm. Professional. The voice of someone who's done this before. Engaging. 30 seconds of silence. Then, rolling left. Jesus, she's responsive. I'm inside his turn guns. 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 The chatter of 50 caliber fire. Splash 10. Chen's voice. Confirmed kill. Morrison's aircraft is rolling impossibly fast. Hayes, stay tight. There's more coming. 3 minutes of chaos. Overlapping voices. Altitude calls. Bearing reports. The sound of men trying to kill before being killed, trying to outmaneuver physics and enemy pilots and their own equipment's limitations. Then Stevens's voice. Rolling right, come on, he's staying with me. I can't shake him. The sound changes. Not gunfire anymore. Impact. Metal tearing. An engine screaming. Then silence. Just static. McKenna's notebook drops from his hands. Stevens. Aircraft 43-28439. Unmodified. Quarter-inch slack in the cables. Not enough to matter on paper. Enough to matter when a zero's on your tail and you're rolling right and the plane hesitates for a heartbeat, and the heartbeat is the difference between the bullets missing and the bullets hitting, and suddenly you're not thinking about anything anymore because you're dead. Cooper picks up the notebook, looks at the entry, at the notation unmodified. His face goes gray. That's 8, he says quietly. 8 names. We could have saved him. McKenna's voice is hollow. If we'd done his plane yesterday, if we'd worked faster, if we'd... Don't. Cooper grabs his shoulder, hard. Don't do that. We can't save everyone. We can only save who we can save. He was 24 years old. I know. Had a wife, baby daughter, showed me pictures last week. I know. And we could have... We saved 8. Cooper's voice rises. 8 pilots flew with modifications. 8 pilots came home. Stevens didn't have the modification because we hadn't gotten to his plane yet. That's not our fault. That's mathematics. We can't modify 53 aircraft in one day. We could try. We are trying. Cooper releases his shoulder, points at the flight line where 43 more P-38s wait. We're trying right now, and tonight we'll modify 6 more, and tomorrow night 6 more after that. And maybe we'll get fast enough that next time we'll have everyone covered before they fly. He picks up the notebook, opens to page 9, writes Lieutenant Paul Stevens, age 24, August 18, 1943, unmodified. This one's not on you. This one's on the system that made modification necessary in the first place. 1200 hours. Lieutenant Hayes finds McKenna in the maintenance hangar. Doesn't speak. Just puts a hand on his shoulder and squeezes. They stand like that for a moment, pilot and mechanic officer, and enlisted 2 men on opposite sides of rank, who've become collaborators in a conspiracy that's saving lives and violating every regulation written. Stevens was my wingman, Hayes finally says. New. Good pilot, fast reflexes, should have made it. I know. His plane hadn't been modified yet. McKenna's voice is flat, dead. We were going to do it tonight. Hayes is quiet. Then, how many have been done? 14. How many left? 39. How fast can you work? Cooper and I can do 6 per night. Maybe 8 if we skip sleep. Hayes nods. Does the math. 5 more days, minimum. Yes, sir. We don't have 5 days. Intelligence says the Japanese are massing for a major offensive. Could be 40-50 zeros in the air by next week. McKenna looks at Hayes, at the exhaustion in his face, at the guilt that comes from surviving when your wingman didn't. What are you suggesting, sir? I'm suggesting we get help. Hayes pulls out a folded paper, opens it. It's a list. 23 names. Every mechanic in the squadron. I talked to Morrison and Chen and the other pilots who flew with modifications, told them what you did, what we're doing. He taps the list. These mechanics, they're good men, loyal, and they're tired of watching pilots die. Morrison's talking to his crew chief right now. Chen's talking to his. By tonight we'll have a dozen mechanics who know how to install the wire. That's not help, McKenna says. That's a conspiracy. Yes, it is. If we get caught, if someone reports this, every name on that list goes to court-martial. I know. Their careers end. Their families suffer. Everything they've built. I know. Hayes folds the paper, puts it back in his pocket. But you know what else? Stevens's daughter grows up without a father. His wife gets a telegram and a flag and a pension that doesn't fill the hole in her life. And next week, maybe 2 more wives get the same telegram. And the week after 3 more. Unless we do something. He meets McKenna's eyes. You started this because you couldn't watch good men die anymore. These mechanics, they feel the same way. They want to help. Let them. McKenna thinks about Cooper. About his son in a POW camp. About a man who spent 23 years following rules and finally found something worth breaking them for. Thinks about Stevens. About 7 other names in a notebook. About 43 more aircraft that need modification and a major offensive coming, and mathematics that says 6 aircraft per night isn't fast enough. Okay, he says. But we do it right. I train every mechanic personally, show them the exact technique. They practice on scrap cables until I'm satisfied they can do it in their sleep. Agreed. And we keep records, every installation, every test, every measurement. If this goes wrong, I want documentation proving we did it carefully, deliberately. That we weren't cowboys, we were engineers. Yes, sir, engineers. 1800 hours. Maintenance hangar C. McKenna stands in front of 23 mechanics. Ages range from 19 to 46. Years of service from 6 months to 24 years. Every one of them volunteered. Every one of them knows the stakes. He holds up a piece of piano wire. This is 12 cents worth of metal. It's also the difference between living and dying. I'm going to teach you how to install it. You're going to practice until you can do it perfectly every time blindfolded. Because if you screw this up, a pilot dies. And if a pilot dies because you screwed up, I will personally testify at your court-martial that you were incompetent and reckless and should never have been trusted with a wrench. The mechanics stare. Nobody laughs. Nobody speaks. McKenna continues. The installation takes 48 minutes, 11 minutes per cable. You'll work in pairs. One installs, one verifies. You'll use flashlights taped to narrow beam. You'll work between 2100 and 0400 hours when officers are asleep and patrols aren't scheduled. You will not talk about this. Not to other mechanics. Not to pilots. Not to friends. Not to anyone. This stays in this room until it either works or we all go to prison together. He looks at each face, sees fear, sees determination, sees the same calculation he made 4 days ago. Regulations versus lives, careers versus conscience. The law versus the law that says you don't let brothers die when you can save them. Anyone wants to leave, leave now. No judgment, no questions, just walk away. Nobody moves. McKenna nods. Good, let's get to work. For the next 3 hours, 23 mechanics practice on spare cables strung between sawhorses. Bend the wire, weave it through, lock it, test, over and over, until hands know the motion without thinking. McKenna walks between them, correcting technique, measuring tension, rejecting installations that aren't perfect. Cooper helps showing the younger mechanics how to feel for the lock, how to test the tension, how to know when it's right versus when it's almost right versus when it's wrong and will kill someone. By 2100 hours, 12 pairs of mechanics are approved. 24 men who can now install 4 wires in 48 minutes with 0 defects. They spread across the airfield like shadows moving between aircraft working in silence. McKenna coordinates from the maintenance hangar, tracking which aircraft are done, which are in progress, which are next. His notebook fills with serial numbers and times and measurements. Evidence. Documentation. The paper trail that will either exonerate them or convict them depending on whether the modifications work. By 0400 hours, August 19th, 38 aircraft have been modified. 15 remaining. Tomorrow night tonight technically, since it's already past midnight, they'll finish. 53 P-38 Lightnings with cable tensions that don't match specifications but do match reality. 53 aircraft that will respond instantly when pilots need them to. 53 chances for men to come home instead of burn. McKenna walks the flight line as dawn breaks, touches each modified aircraft like a blessing or a curse, or both. His hands ache. His eyes burn. He hasn't slept in 48 hours. Doesn't matter. Sleep is for people who aren't trying to save lives faster than mathematics allows. Cooper falls into step beside him. Neither speaks. They reach the end of the line, walk back. "My son's name is David," Cooper finally says. 22 years old. Wanted to be a teacher before the war. Loved literature. Used to read me poetry. His voice cracks. "I don't know if he's alive. Don't know if he's being treated well. Don't know if I'll ever see him again." He stops, looks at the aircraft, at the modifications invisible to everyone except the mechanics who installed them, and the pilots who will feel the difference when their lives depend on it. "But I know this. Somewhere some other father's son is going to fly one of these planes. And when a Zero gets on his tail and he rolls and the plane responds instantly, he's going to live. He's going to come home. He's going to get old and tell his kids about the war and how he survived." Cooper's voice steadies. "That's worth everything. That's worth my career, my freedom, whatever happens. Because even if I never see David again, at least I helped save someone." McKenna puts a hand on his shoulder. Can't speak. Can't find words for what that means to work alongside a man who's lost everything and still chooses to help others not lose the same. They stand in silence while the sun climbs and the airfield wakes and 53 P-38s wait to prove whether courage and piano wire are enough to change the mathematics of survival. That night, they finish. All 53 aircraft, all modified, all tested, all ready. And in the darkness between midnight and dawn 24, mechanics shake hands and disperse to their bunks, carrying a secret that weighs 12 cents and might cost them everything, but has already saved more lives than history will probably ever know. Because sometimes victory isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet men doing illegal things for moral reasons, while the world sleeps. August 23, 1943. 5th Air Force Intelligence Summary. Japanese forces massing at Doba Airfield, estimated 47 A6M0 fighters, 12 Ki-43 Oscars. Weather forecast, scattered clouds visibility, 12 miles. Kill zone conditions. Perfect weather for dying. Major Hendricks reads the report twice. Puts it down. Picks it up again. His hands shake slightly, the tremor of a man who's authorized something he can't officially acknowledge, and is about to find out if that decision saves lives or ends careers. He looks across his desk at McKenna, who stands at attention with the rigidity of someone who hasn't slept in 72 hours and doesn't plan to start now. "All aircraft modified?" Hendricks asks. His voice is careful, neutral, the voice of someone asking about routine maintenance while actually asking about conspiracy. McKenna doesn't blink. "All aircraft serviced and ready for operations, sir." "Cable tensions. Within operational parameters, sir." "Not within specification. Within operational parameters. The distinction matters. Specification is what the manual says. Operational parameters is what keeps pilots alive." Hendricks understands the difference, even if he can't acknowledge it. "We're launching the full squadron," Hendricks says. 53 aircraft. Largest strike we've attempted since arriving in theater. Intelligence says the Japanese are preparing a major push. We hit them first, or they hit us." He pauses, studies McKenna's face. "If something goes wrong up there, if aircraft performance issues cause casualties, then it's on me, sir." "No, Sergeant. It's on both of us." Hendricks's voice drops. "I saw what you were doing. I chose not to stop it. That makes me complicit. We succeed together or we burn together. Clear." "Crystal, sir." Hendricks nods, dismisses him. McKenna salutes, turns to leave. Sergeant. McKenna stops. Sir. Thank you. 2 words. Quiet. The kind of gratitude that can't be written in reports or filed in records, but means everything to the men who receive it. McKenna just nods. Can't trust his voice. Leaves before emotion becomes visible. So 5:30 hours. Flight line. 53 P-38 Lightnings. 106 Allison V-1710 engines. 318 50 caliber machine guns. 53 20mm cannons. And 212 pieces of piano wire that cost $25.44 total, and might be worth more than the combined value of every aircraft they're installed in. McKenna walks between the planes with his notebook checking serial numbers, verifying installations one final time. Cooper works the other end of the line doing the same. 22 other mechanics perform final pre-flight checks with the intensity of people who know that every rivet, every fuel line, every control cable might mean the difference between a pilot coming home or burning at 15,000 feet. Lieutenant Hayes approaches, flight suit on, parachute harness adjusted, face painted with the calm that comes before violence. He doesn't speak, just extends his hand. McKenna shakes it. 53 aircraft, Hayes says quietly. Largest strike force we've ever launched. If the modifications work, if we can outmaneuver the Zeros consistently, this could change everything. And if they don't work, then we die like we've been dying. But at least we tried something. Hayes squeezes McKenna's hand. Either way, you gave us a chance. That's more than we had last week. Other pilots are gathering now. Captain Morrison, Lieutenant Chen, Lieutenant Patricia Weber, one of 2 women pilots in the squadron, 26 years old. Michigan flew crop dusters before the war and now flies a fighter that's killed more American pilots than enemy fire until 6 days ago, when everything changed. She catches McKenna's eye. Nods. He nods back. She knows. They all know. The modifications aren't secret anymore. They're common knowledge that everyone's agreed not to discuss the collective lie that protects the collective truth. 0600 hours. Engines start. 106 12-cylinder screams that shake the ground and the air and the bones of everyone standing close enough to feel it. McKenna watches from the flight line as 53 P-38s taxi in sequence. Watches as they line up on the runway. Watches as the first pair powers up, releases brakes, accelerates, rotates, climbs. Then the second pair. Third. Fourth. The sky fills with twin boom silhouettes. America's answer to Japan's air superiority, laden with modifications that no engineer approved and no regulation permits but every pilot needs. The last aircraft lifts off at 0614 hours. The airfield goes quiet. McKenna stands there long after the engine sounds fade, staring at empty sky. Cooper walks over, stands beside him, neither speaks. What's there to say? Everything that matters is happening 12 miles high and 100 miles away, where 53 pilots are about to test whether courage and cable tension are enough to beat physics and experience, and an enemy that's been winning this fight since Pearl Harbor. Coffee? Cooper finally asks. McKenna shakes his head. Can't. If I sit down, I'll fall asleep. If I fall asleep, I'll dream. And I don't want to dream about what happens if we're wrong. We're not wrong. You don't know that. I know 8 pilots came back who wouldn't have without the modifications. I know Hayes got 3 zeros in 7 minutes. I know Morrison said his plane handled like a different aircraft. Cooper's voice is firm, certain. The modifications work. We're not wrong about that. But are we right? McKenna turns to face him. Morally, legally, are we right to have done this without authorization, without testing, without letting more men die while we wait for permission? Cooper cuts him off. Yes, we're right. We're so goddamn right it hurts. And if they court-martial us for it, I'll stand in front of that judge and say I'd do it again. I'd do it 1,000 times. Because the alternative is standing here watching planes take off, knowing we could have helped and didn't. 0847 hours. Radio chatter begins. Contact. Estimated 47 zeros. Altitude 15,000. Engaging. Morrison's voice. Calm. Professional. The voice of a man who's done this before, but never quite like this. Then the sound changes. Not the hesitant combat of men flying flawed aircraft. The aggressive combat of men flying aircraft that finally respond the way they're supposed to. Rolling left got him guns, guns, guns. Splash 1. Braking right. He can't follow. I'm inside his turn. Confirmed kill. 3 zeros on my 6 rolling inverted. They're falling off. Jesus Christ. They can't keep up. The radio fills with voices. Excited voices. Victorious voices. The voices of men who've been losing this fight for months and are suddenly shockingly winning. McKenna and Cooper stand frozen in the operations tent, listening to combat unfold through speakers that can't quite capture the reality of what's happening, but convey enough to know that something fundamental has shifted. This is Morrison, requesting ammunition status. Morrison, your Winchester on 50 cal, 20 millimeters at 40%. Copy. Disengaging. Pause. Confirm 12 zeros destroyed. Repeat, 12 zeros destroyed. 0 friendly losses. 0. Say again, 0 friendly casualties. The operations tent erupts. Officers shouting. Ground crews cheering. Someone slaps McKenna on the back so hard he stumbles forward. Cooper grabs his shoulder, steadying him, and McKenna sees tears running down the older man's face. Tears of relief, of vindication of a father who couldn't save his own son, but helped save someone else's. Major Hendricks stands in the corner, face unreadable. He catches McKenna's eye, nods once, slow, deliberate. The nod says, "We did this. We broke the rules and saved lives, and the math works, and the dead can rest easier knowing their deaths led to changes that prevented more deaths." Then Hendricks turns away, already writing the after-action report that will have to explain how 53 aircraft suddenly performed better than specifications without actually explaining anything at all. 0923 hours. The aircraft return. All 53. Not a single loss. They land in sequence taxi to hardstands, shut down engines. Pilots climb out with faces that McKenna will remember for the rest of his life. Faces painted with exhaustion and exhilaration, and the particular disbelief that comes from expecting to die, and instead discovering you can win. Hayes finds McKenna first. Doesn't speak. Just grabs him in a hug that lifts him off the ground, and McKenna Technical Sergeant James Patrick. McKenna, 29 years old. Career: enlisted a man who's spent his entire adult life maintaining proper distance between ranks. Hugs back with everything he has. 12 zeros, Hayes says when he finally lets go. 12 confirmed kills, 0 losses, 0 casualties. We rolled inside their turns. We outmaneuvered them. We won. His voice breaks. We actually won. Morrison approaches, then Chen, then Weber. Other pilots gather, and suddenly McKenna is surrounded by 18 men and women who are alive because of 12 cents worth of piano wire per aircraft, and a mechanic who couldn't watch good people die anymore. Speech, someone shouts. McKenna, say something. McKenna looks at the faces. At Hayes, who trusted him when trust meant risking court-martial. At Morrison, who flew the second modified aircraft and came back to tell others it worked. At Weber, who told him last week that she'd rather die trying something new than die repeating the same fatal mistakes. At Cooper, standing behind them, all tears still wet on his face, living vicariously through other people's sons, since his own is unreachable. I'm just a mechanic, McKenna says. His voice is hoarse, raw. I fix things. You fly them. Today we all did our jobs. That's all. That's not all. Weber steps forward. You saved our lives. You broke regulations to save our lives. That's not just doing your job. That's heroism. Heroism is flying into combat knowing you might not return. What I did... McKenna stops. Swallows. What we did, me and Cooper and 22 other mechanics, was just refuse to accept that good people had to keep dying from preventable problems. That's not heroism. That's just giving a damn. But the pilots are shaking their heads. They understand what McKenna doesn't quite grasp yet, that there are different kinds of courage, and the kind that risks prison to save lives is no less valuable than the kind that risks death to win battles. Hayes speaks for all of them. History won't remember this. Command can't acknowledge it. Lockheed won't document it. But we'll remember. Every pilot who flies a modified P-38 from now on will owe their life to a mechanic who cared more about results than regulations. He snaps a salute sharp formal, the kind usually reserved for generals. Thank you, Sergeant McKenna. One by one, 18 pilots salute. McKenna stands there overwhelmed, unable to process the moment. Then Cooper steps forward, salutes too. And the other mechanics. 24 enlisted men saluting one of their own breaking protocol, acknowledging that sometimes the greatest service happens in darkness and silence, and through actions that can never be officially recognized. August 24, 1943. Lockheed Field Representative Thomas Brennan arrives on base to investigate anomalous performance reports. He's 46 Caltech engineering degree, 15 years designing aircraft, a man who lives by specifications and tolerances, and the certainty that properly designed systems perform as calculated. McKenna watches him measure cable tensions on 6 randomly selected aircraft. Watches him frown. Watches him pull out the technical manual, compare measurements, frown deeper. These tensions are outside specification, Brennan says, by approximately 3/16 of an inch. Yes, sir. Manual clearly states maximum tension should not exceed. Manual was written for factory conditions. We're not in a factory. McKenna keeps his voice neutral. Professional. We're in a jungle. 100-degree heat. 80% humidity. Cables stretch. We pre-tension them to compensate for environmental factors. Brennan stares at him. At the cables. At the aircraft. His engineer's brain is doing calculations, running scenarios, trying to reconcile what the math says should happen with what the combat reports say did happen. Pre-tensioning cables isn't in any maintenance protocol. No, sir. It's an unauthorized field modification. Yes, sir. You understand I'm required to report this? Yes, sir. Brennan is quiet for a long moment. Then, walk with me, Sergeant. They walk to the end of the flight line, away from other personnel. Brennan stops, stares at the aircraft, at the jungle beyond, at the sky that's been killing American pilots for months. 12 Zeros destroyed yesterday. 0 friendly losses. That's unprecedented. Yes, sir. Previous engagement average was 2 Zeros destroyed for every 1 P-38 lost. That's a 2-to-1 kill ratio, barely sustainable. Yes, sir. Yesterday's engagement was 12-0, infinite kill ratio. Brennan turns to face McKenna. Something changed. Something fundamental. And you're telling me it's cable tension. I'm telling you the aircraft are performing as they should have been designed to perform in tropical conditions. You're telling me Lockheed made a design error. I'm telling you the design didn't account for operational reality. McKenna meets his eyes. You tested 12 aircraft in California for 2 weeks. We've flown thousands of hours in conditions you never simulated. We found a problem. We fixed it. Results speak for themselves. Brennan pulls out his notebook, writes something, closes it. I'm going to file a report recommending immediate review of P-38 control cable tension specifications for tropical operations. I'm going to suggest that current specifications may be inadequate given environmental factors. I'm going to propose revised maintenance protocols that include periodic retensioning to compensate for cable stretch. He pauses. What I'm not going to do is mention unauthorized modifications or field mechanics taking matters into their own hands. Clear? McKenna feels something unlock in his chest. Clear, sir. Because officially you didn't modify anything. You simply performed enhanced maintenance based on operational observations, and if that enhanced maintenance happens to improve performance, well, that's just good maintenance. Brennan almost smiles. Almost. Between you and me, Sergeant, You probably saved Lockheed from a congressional investigation. If casualties had continued at previous rates, someone would have started asking hard questions about aircraft design. Now, instead of defending our aircraft, we can study your solution and implement it fleet-wide. So we're not getting court-martialed. You're getting a commendation for innovative maintenance practices under combat conditions. Brennan extends his hand. Thank you for making my aircraft work the way it was supposed to work all along. They shake. McKenna watches Brennan walk away, watches the official story being written in real time, the narrative that will file away inconvenient truths about regulations violated and unauthorized modifications and mechanics who committed crimes to save lives. History won't record what actually happened, but the pilots who survived will know, and in the end, maybe that's enough. September 1943. The piano wire modifications spread throughout 5th Air Force. Mechanics in other squadrons hear whispers, ask questions, get quiet, demonstrations in maintenance hangars after dark. By month's end, 237 P-38s have been modified. Loss rates drop from 23% to 7%. Kill ratios improve from 2-to-1 to 8-to-1. The Japanese High Command issues new tactical directives advising caution when engaging P-38s, noting that American fighters are demonstrating improved maneuverability inconsistent with previous performance assessments. Nobody mentions the piano wire. It becomes ghost knowledge information everyone has, but nobody discusses the secret that's not secret but can't be acknowledged, because acknowledgement would require explaining how it happened and who authorized it, and why it took 8 deaths to implement a 12-cent fix. McKenna continues his work. Modifies aircraft, trains mechanics, keeps his notebook updated with installation records and performance data, and the names of pilots who came home because someone cared enough to break rules. Cooper works beside him, never mentioning his son in the POW camp, but working with the intensity of a man who's channeling grief into action, saving strangers, because he can't save family. One night late, McKenna opens his notebook to the first page. Lieutenant Danny Reeves, age 22, cable slack 0.24 inches. The kid who figured it out first, who modified his own aircraft and died anyway because one modification wasn't enough when you're alone against superior numbers. McKenna adds a note below the name. Your wire saved 237 aircraft and counting. You started this. We finished it. Thank you. He turns to page 8, the page where he wrote and crossed out Lieutenant Hayes's name. Adds another note. 3 zeros. Came home alive. Still flying. Below that, a list of every pilot who survived combat in a modified aircraft. The list fills 3 pages now. Will fill more as time goes on. Each name represents a life that might have ended, a family that might have received a telegram, a future that might have been erased, except a mechanic decided regulations mattered less than results. The notebook will never be official record. Will never be cited in reports. Will never be studied by historians or filed in archives. But it exists. And existence sometimes is enough. Because in a war, where death is documented meticulously and life is taken for granted, someone needs to keep count of the people who didn't die. Someone needs to remember that victory isn't just about killing enemies, it's about keeping friends alive. And in maintenance hangars across the Pacific, in the hours between midnight and dawn, when regulations sleep and conscience wakes, mechanics continue the work that can't be acknowledged but must be done. They install piano wire. They measure tension. They test response. They save lives 12 cents at a time, knowing that official recognition will never come. But unofficial gratitude flows through every pilot who rolls their aircraft and feels instant response and realizes that somewhere someone cared enough to fix what bureaucracy said couldn't be broken. The war continues. The killing continues. But the mathematics shift slowly toward survival. And in that shift, in that small victory, bought with piano wire and midnight risk and mechanics who chose conscience over career, there's proof that sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with guns, but with wrenches, wielded by people who refuse to accept that death is inevitable just because regulations say change is impossible. October 1943. Japanese Naval Air Force Tactical Assessment Report classified. Lieutenant Commander Takeo Yamamoto writes in careful script, American P-38 aircraft, demonstrating capabilities inconsistent with previous engagement data. Roll rates exceed calculated performance by estimated 30%. Turning radius reduced beyond aerodynamic predictions. Recommend immediate tactical revision. He doesn't write what he's thinking we're losing to aircraft that shouldn't be able to do what they're doing, and nobody can explain why. The report circulates through Japanese command. Reaches Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commander of 3rd Fleet Air Operations. He reads it 3 times. Calls in his chief engineering officer. Is this possible? Can American aircraft performance improve this dramatically without visible modifications? The engineer studies the data, shakes his head. Not according to our intelligence. No new P-38 variant has been introduced. No engine upgrades. No armament changes. Yet combat results show definitive performance improvement beginning late August. He hesitates. Sir, either our previous assessments were incorrect, or the Americans have implemented modifications we cannot detect. Ozawa stares at the map showing engagement locations. 12 battles. 147 Zeros lost. 31 P-38s destroyed. 4.7 to 1 kill ratio favoring Americans. 3 months ago, the ratio was nearly even. Something changed. Something invisible. Something that's killing his pilots, and he can't identify, can't counter, can't even properly describe except to say that American fighters roll faster and turn tighter and respond quicker than physics says they should. Issue new tactical directive, Ozawa says. His voice is tired, defeated. The voice of a commander watching his advantage evaporate for reasons he doesn't understand. 0 pilots are to avoid prolonged turning engagements with P-38s. Use speed and climb rate advantage. Hit and run tactics only. Do not attempt to outmaneuver them. Sir, that contradicts our fundamental air combat doctrine. Our fundamental air combat doctrine assumed we had maneuverability advantage. We don't anymore. Ozawa closes the report. Whatever the Americans did, however they did it, it worked. And until we understand it, we adapt or we die. The directive goes out October 15, 1943. Japanese pilots read it with confusion turning to fear. The 0 is their advantage. Maneuverability is their weapon. For 2 years they've won by turning inside enemy fighters, by rolling faster, by exploiting agility that American aircraft couldn't match. Now suddenly they're being told to avoid the fight they're trained to win because the Americans can somehow win it instead. Morale craters. Confidence evaporates. Pilots who flew aggressively start flying cautiously. And cautious pilots die anyway, just slower. November 1943. Doba Doura Airfield. McKenna receives a letter forwarded through official channels. The envelope is marked via Australian Post with a return address in Brisbane. He opens it carefully. Inside a single page of handwritten text. Sergeant McKenna. You don't know me. My name is Helen Reeves. I'm Danny's fiancée. His widow now, though we never married. The Air Force sent me his personal effects last month. Among them was a letter he wrote but never mailed. In it, he described modifying his aircraft's control cables using piano wire. He wrote that he figured out the slack was killing pilots, that he fixed it himself because nobody would listen to his reports. McKenna's hands shake. He keeps reading. Danny wrote that if anything happened to him, he wanted me to know the modification worked, that his plane responded perfectly, that he died fighting an enemy he could finally match, not fighting his own equipment. He wrote that he hoped other mechanics would figure out what he'd done and spread it to other aircraft. He wrote that saving lives mattered more than following regulations. The letter continues. I don't know if anyone found his modification. I don't know if his death meant anything beyond grief and loss. But I wanted you to know that my, Danny, My brilliant, stubborn, beautiful. Danny tried to fix what was broken, even when it cost him everything. If you're reading this, if you're the mechanic they forwarded this letter to, maybe you found what he did. Maybe you understood. Maybe you helped others survive what he couldn't. If so, thank you. Thank you for making his death matter. McKenna sits in the maintenance hangar, letter in hand, crying for the first time since the war started. Cooper finds him like that 20 minutes later. Doesn't ask what's wrong. Just sits beside him, reads the letter. When McKenna hands it over, cries too. We should write back, Cooper says finally. Tell her what Danny started. How many lives his idea saved. Can't. Modifications are still unofficial. Any documentation could trigger investigation. So she lives thinking her fiancé died for nothing. She lives knowing he died trying to fix something broken. That's not nothing. Cooper folds the letter carefully, hands it back. You're wrong, you know. We owe her the truth. We owe Danny the truth. Just because official channels can't acknowledge it doesn't mean we can't tell her privately. And if she talks, if she tells the press, if this becomes public, then 24 mechanics get court-martialed and Danny gets credit for saving hundreds of lives. Cooper's voice is firm. I'll take that trade. I'll take it gladly. That night, McKenna writes a response. Doesn't mention specifics, doesn't incriminate anyone. Just writes, Mrs. Reeves, your fiancé's observations reached the right people. His insight has been implemented widely and quietly. He saved more lives than you know, more than I can tell you. But please understand he was right. The problem was real. The solution worked. And every pilot who comes home alive owes him a debt they'll never know they're paying. Your Danny mattered. His death meant something. I promise you that. He mails it through unofficial channels, doesn't use official postage, doesn't go through military post, just gives it to an Australian supply officer heading to Brisbane and asks him to mail it there. The officer reads the address, nods. Danny Reeves, I knew him. Good kid. Heard he died in August. He did. Heard he was a hell of a mechanic before he became a pilot. He was the best. The officer pockets the letter. I'll make sure she gets this. And Sergeant, whatever you're not saying in this letter, whatever you can't say, thank you for saying it anyway. December 1943. 5th Air Force Statistical Summary. P-38. Lightning Combat Effectiveness Ratings. August 1943. 2. 1-to-1 kill ratio, 23% loss rate. December 1943. 7.8 to 1 kill ratio, 6% loss rate. Aircraft availability, 89% operational readiness versus 71% previous quarter. Pilot confidence surveys, 94% report high confidence in aircraft performance versus 61% previous quarter. The numbers tell a story that official reports can't acknowledge. Something changed. Something worked. Something turned America's troubled fighter into Japan's nightmare. And the only people who know exactly what and how are 24 mechanics who've agreed to take the secret to their graves if necessary. Major Hendricks reads the summary in his office, calls McKenna in, closes the door. You see these numbers? Yes, sir. You understand what they mean. They mean pilots are coming home alive, sir. They mean you saved this squadron. You and Cooper and the others. Hendricks puts down the report. They also mean I can't ever officially acknowledge what you did, can't put you up for medals, can't write commendations, can't even mention it in fitness reports because any documentation creates paper trail that leads to court-martial. McKenna stands at attention. I understand, sir. Do you understand that you'll finish this war with the same rank you started? That you'll go home with no recognition, no glory, no official record of having done anything except routine maintenance? Yes, sir. And you're okay with that? McKenna thinks about Hayes' landing after his first modified flight, about Morrison's voice on the radio, 12 Zeros destroyed, 0 friendly losses, about Helen Reeves's letter, about Danny's sacrifice leading to 237 aircraft modified and hundreds of pilots saved. About Cooper working himself to exhaustion because he can't save his own son, but he can save someone else's. I'm more than okay with that, sir. I'm proud of it. Hendricks is quiet for a moment. Then, off the record, just between us, I want you to know something. I recommended you for Silver Star. Wrote a citation about innovative maintenance practices saving squadron personnel under combat conditions. Sent it up through channels. He pauses. It was rejected. Not because you didn't deserve it, because acknowledging your contribution would require explaining exactly what you contributed. And explaining that would expose the unauthorized modifications. So instead of a medal, you get my gratitude and the knowledge that you did what needed doing, regardless of recognition. That's enough, sir. It shouldn't be. But it is. McKenna meets his eyes. We didn't do this for medals. We did it because watching good people die when we could prevent it was unbearable. The reward isn't recognition. The reward is pilots coming home. January 1944. Lieutenant Hayes receives promotion to captain. Takes command of his own flight. On his first day as flight commander, he gathers his pilots in the briefing room. Closes the door. I want to tell you something that's not in any manual and can't be officially acknowledged. Your aircraft have been modified. Control cables have been pre-tensioned to eliminate slack. The modification is unauthorized, undocumented, and completely essential. It's the reason we're winning fights we used to lose. It's the reason many of you are alive. The pilots exchange glances. Nobody seems surprised. Apparently the secret isn't as secret as McKenna hoped. The mechanic who developed this modification, who personally trained 24 other mechanics to implement it, cannot be named, cannot be recognized, cannot be officially thanked. But you can thank him. Every time you roll your aircraft and it responds instantly, that's him. Every time you outmaneuver a zero, that's him. Every time you come home alive after combat, that's him. Hayes pauses. His name is Sergeant James McKenna. He works in Maintenance Hangar C. He saved your lives before you ever met him. If you see him, shake his hand. That's all. Just shake his hand. He'll understand. That afternoon, McKenna is working on an engine when pilots start appearing. One by one. They don't announce themselves. Don't make speeches. Just walk up, extend a hand, shake firmly, and leave. 18 pilots over the course of 2 hours. McKenna shakes every hand, says nothing, understands everything. Cooper watches from across the hangar, smiling through tears. You're famous, Cooper says when the last pilot leaves. I'm anonymous. There's a difference. Not to them. To them, you're the reason they're alive. To them, I'm a mechanic who did his job. You keep saying that. You keep pretending this was just maintenance. Why? McKenna is quiet for a long time. Then, because the moment I admit it was more than that, the moment I accept that I did something extraordinary, I have to accept that I'm the kind of person who breaks rules. And I spent my whole career being the kind of person who follows them. I don't know how to reconcile those things. Cooper puts a hand on his shoulder. You reconcile them by understanding that good people sometimes have to break bad rules. That following regulations that kill people isn't virtue, it's cowardice. You're not a rule breaker. You're a rule fixer. You saw a regulation that was getting people killed, and you fixed it the only way you could. That's not criminal. That's moral. The regulations don't see it that way. Then the regulations are wrong, and you were right. And the 237 pilots flying modified aircraft are proof. March 1944, Pacific Theater. Air Superiority Assessment Classified Briefing to Joint Chiefs of Staff. American air superiority in Southwest Pacific Theater has been achieved. P-38 Lightning fighters demonstrate consistent performance advantage over Japanese aircraft. Loss rates reduced 74% since August 1943. Kill ratios improved 371% same period. Contributing factors include improved pilot training, better tactics, and enhanced aircraft maintenance protocols. Nobody mentions piano wire. Nobody mentions unauthorized modifications. Nobody mentions that the enhanced maintenance protocols were developed by an enlisted mechanic who committed crimes to save lives. The official story is written, and it's bloodless and bureaucratic and completely false in every way that matters, while being technically accurate in every way that doesn't. McKenna reads the briefing summary when it's declassified months later, laughs bitterly, shows it to Cooper. Enhanced maintenance protocols, that's what they're calling it. Could be worse, Could be calling it court-martial evidence. Could be telling the truth. The truth is dangerous. The truth requires admitting that regulations failed, and enlisted men succeeded where officers and engineers didn't. That's not a story the military wants told. Cooper takes the report, reads it again. But we know the truth, and the pilots know, and Helen Reeves knows, and Danny knows wherever he is, and in the end, maybe that's enough. Is it? McKenna's voice is tired, raw. Is it enough that we know and they don't? That pilots are alive and don't know why? That we saved hundreds of lives and can't ever claim credit? Yes, Cooper says firmly. Yes, it's enough. Because the alternative is those pilots being dead, and us having followed regulations, and everyone knowing exactly who to blame for letting preventable deaths continue. I'll take anonymous success over acknowledged failure every time. May 1945. War in Europe ends. Pacific War continues. P-38. Lightning fighters have evolved new variants, upgraded engines, improved armaments. But every single one still has piano wire modifications in the control cables. The modification that started with Danny Reeves and spread through McKenna and Cooper and 22 other mechanics has become standard practice. Not officially, not in manuals. But in reality, in the field and the places where aircraft get maintained by people who care more about results than regulations. Lockheed eventually implements factory modifications addressing cable tension in tropical conditions. The official fix looks suspiciously similar to the piano wire solution just engineered and documented and approved through proper channels. Nobody acknowledges the connection. Nobody admits that the official solution came from unofficial field modifications. The paperwork says, Lockheed engineers identified and resolved a tension specification issue. The truth is that Lockheed engineers reverse-engineered what mechanics had been doing for 2 years and claimed credit for fixing a problem they initially denied existed. McKenna doesn't care. Credit doesn't matter. Recognition doesn't matter. What matters is that in the 2 years since that first midnight modification, P-38 loss rates stayed low, and kill ratios stayed high, and pilots kept coming home. What matters is that somewhere, a mother got a letter saying her son completed his tour instead of a telegram saying he died in combat. What matters is that the math shifted from death toward life and bureaucracy, eventually caught up to acknowledge what mechanics had known all along. August 1945. Japan surrenders. The war ends. McKenna stands on the flight line at Doba Doura Airfield, now expanded, improved, barely recognizable from the desperate outpost it was 2 years ago. 53 P-38s are parked in neat rows. Every one of them has been modified. Every one of them brought pilots home. He opens his notebook to the last page. Counts names. 417 pilots flew modified aircraft during the war. 32 died in combat, lost to superior numbers. Mechanical failure. Bad luck. The 1,000 things that kill people in war, regardless of cable tension. But 385 survived. 385 lives that statistics said should have ended, but didn't, because a mechanic decided regulations mattered less than results, and 24 other mechanics agreed to risk everything to prove it. Cooper finds him there as the sun sets. They stand in silence watching light fade from aircraft that won't fly combat again, that will be scrapped or sold or forgotten, while the men who flew them go home to build lives that wouldn't exist except for 12 cents of piano wire installed in darkness by people whose names history won't record. "We did good work," Cooper says finally. We broke a lot of rules. We saved a lot of lives. Same thing in the end. McKenna closes his notebook, puts it in his pocket. You ever hear from your son? Last month. He's alive, being processed for repatriation, coming home. Cooper's voice breaks. Coming home because the war ended before he died in that camp. And maybe the war ended sooner because we helped win air superiority. Maybe my son's alive because we helped shorten the war by some tiny fraction. I'll never know for sure, but I choose to believe it. They shake hands, hold the grip longer than necessary. Two men who started as colleagues and became conspirators and ended as friends bound by shared secrets and saved lives and the knowledge that they did something that mattered even though acknowledgement will never come. The war ends with victory. But victory isn't medals and parades and official recognition. Victory is 385 pilots coming home. Victory is Helen Reeves. Knowing her fiancé's death led to changes that saved hundreds. Victory is Cooper's son surviving imprisonment because the war ended months earlier than it might have without air superiority. That came from aircraft that performed better than specifications, because mechanics cared enough to fix what regulations said couldn't be broken. And in maintenance hangars across the Pacific in the final days before peace mechanics remove piano wire from control cables, before aircraft get shipped stateside for inspection and inevitable questions. The modifications disappear like they never existed. The evidence vanishes. The truth becomes rumor, becomes legend, becomes forgotten. But the pilots remember. And remembering sometimes is all the recognition that matters. September 1945, Long Beach, California. McKenna stands in a garage that smells like motor oil and possibility. The sign above the door reads, McKenna's Automotive Repair. In letters he painted himself, the paint still wet enough to smudge if touched. 29 years old when the war started. 31 now. 2 years that feel like 20. He hangs his discharge papers on the wall next to a photograph, black and white, faded at the edges, showing a young man in coveralls standing beside P-38 Lightning, 43-28432. August 1943. The day everything changed. A customer enters, middle-aged woman, concerned expression, keys in hand. My car's making a noise. Mechanic down the street says I need a new transmission. $800. McKenna wipes his hands on a rag. Let me take a look. 20 minutes later, he's tightening a loose belt. That'll be $5. The woman stares. $5? But the other mechanic said. The other mechanic was wrong, or lying. Either way, your transmission is fine. Just needed a belt adjustment. She pays. Thanks him profusely. Leaves. McKenna returns to the engine he's rebuilding, a 1938 Ford. Nothing special. Nothing extraordinary. Just an engine that needs fixing, and a mechanic who knows how. It's not P-38 Allisons producing 475 horsepower at 3,000 RPM. It's not combat modifications installed in darkness to save lives. It's just honest work for honest pay, and some days that's enough. Other days, it's not even close. The bell above the door chimes. McKenna looks up. Staff Sergeant Raymond Cooper stands in the doorway, older somehow, despite only 2 years passing gray in his hair that wasn't there before. They stare at each other for a moment. Then Cooper smiles. Heard you opened a shop. Thought I'd stop by. Cooper. McKenna's voice catches. Jesus, Cooper. They embrace like brothers, which in every way that matters they are. Cooper looks around the garage, at the tools organized by size, at the parts cataloged and labeled, at the photograph on the wall. You kept a picture. Only one they'd let me take. Everything else was classified or confiscated or conveniently lost in paperwork. McKenna points at the P-38. But I kept that. Reminder. Of what? That sometimes fixing what's broken matters more than following rules. Cooper walks to the photograph, studies it, touches the frame gently. You hear from any of the others, the mechanics? 3 letters. Jenkins opened a shop in Texas. Morrison different. Morrison, the mechanic, not the pilot, got a job with Boeing. Williams went back to farming. Said he was done with machines that kill people, wanted to work with machines that grow food. Smart man. How about you? Cooper's expression shifts. My son came home. David. 3 months ago. His voice breaks. He's alive, but he's not the same. Weighs 110 pounds. Has nightmares every night. Barely talks. Sometimes I catch him staring at nothing, and I know he's back in that camp, back in whatever hell he survived while I was here installing piano wire and pretending I was helping. You were helping. Was I David's alive but damaged? And I spent 2 years saving strangers' sons while mine suffered where I couldn't reach him. What kind of father does that? McKenna puts down his wrench. The kind who does what he can with what he has. You couldn't save David, but you saved 385 other people. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing when David wakes up screaming. Cooper sits on a workbench. But I came here for a reason. Got something you need to see. He pulls out a newspaper. New York Times, last week. The headline reads, Mystery Modifications, How American Ingenuity Won Air War. The article describes improved P-38 performance in the Pacific, mentions field modifications by unnamed maintenance personnel, quotes Lieutenant General George Kenny praising innovative maintenance practices that significantly improved combat effectiveness. Doesn't mention piano wire, doesn't mention unauthorized modifications, doesn't mention McKenna or Cooper or the 22 other mechanics who risked court-martial. Just vague praise for unnamed innovators who can't be officially recognized because recognition would require admitting the modifications violated regulations. We're famous, Cooper says, and completely anonymous. That was always the deal. Doesn't make it fair. Fair would be Danny Reeves alive. Fair would be Stevens flying modified aircraft before the Zero got him. Fair would be recognition for the people who actually did the work. McKenna hands back the newspaper. But fair isn't how the world works. We knew that going in. Cooper folds the paper. There's something else. Hayes is organizing a reunion. All the pilots who flew modified aircraft. All the mechanics who installed them. Unofficial gathering. No press. No official recognition. Just the people who know what actually happened, sharing a meal and telling the truth where it can't be documented. When? Next month, San Diego. He's tracked down 87 pilots, 19 mechanics. Wants you there. Says you're the guest of honor. I'm not going. Why not? McKenna returns to the engine he's rebuilding. Because the moment we start gathering, start sharing stories, start creating a community around what we did. Someone notices. Someone investigates. Someone realizes we committed crimes and the statute of limitations might not protect us. Better to stay quiet. Stay anonymous. Stay safe. Stay isolated, you mean. Stay disconnected from the only people who understand what we did and why it mattered. Cooper's voice rises. You saved hundreds of lives. You deserve to hear them say thank you. I don't need thank you. I need to know they're alive. That's enough. Is it really enough? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who's trying to forget instead of remember. You've got one photograph and a garage, and nothing else connecting you to the thing you did that mattered most. Cooper stands, walks to the door. Stops. Come to the reunion. Let people thank you. Let yourself believe that what you did was extraordinary instead of pretending it was just routine maintenance. You earned that. We all did. He leaves. McKenna stares at the photograph, at the young man who didn't know yet what he was capable of, who thought following regulations was enough, who learned that sometimes the most moral thing you can do is break the rules that are killing people. October 1945. San Diego. Hotel del Coronado. McKenna almost doesn't go. Stands outside for 10 minutes before entering, hands shaking, stomach churning. Inside the ballroom fills with people he recognizes. Hayes older now, captain's bars, replaced by civilian clothes. Morrison the pilot, walking with a slight limp from a landing accident that had nothing to do with cable tension. Chen laughing at something Weber's saying. Cooper looking less haunted than he did in Long Beach, standing with 3 other mechanics whose names McKenna remembers from midnight installations. Hayes sees him, crosses the room. "You came." Cooper insisted. "Good, because none of this happens without you." Hayes raises his voice. "Everyone, listen up. This is Technical Sergeant James McKenna, the man who started everything, the man who saved all of us." The room goes quiet. 87 pilots, 19 mechanics. Every one of them staring at McKenna like he's some kind of hero, when all he did was refuse to watch good people die from preventable problems. "I didn't do it alone," McKenna says. His voice is rough. "Cooper and 22 other mechanics, Danny Reeves, who figured it out first. All of you who trusted us enough to fly modified aircraft without official approval. This wasn't one person. This was you," Hayes interrupts. "You're the one who filed the reports nobody wanted to read. You're the one who measured the slack nobody wanted to acknowledge. You're the one who installed the first wire and risked court-martial and trained the rest of us and kept records and refused to accept that death was inevitable just because regulations said change was impossible. You're the reason we're alive." One by one, pilots stand. Morrison, Chen, Weber. 87 men and women who survived combat. They statistically shouldn't have survived because a mechanic cared enough to commit crimes. They're not saluting now. They're civilians free from military protocol. But they're standing, and standing says everything saluting did and more. McKenna can't speak. Can't process the moment. Can't reconcile the person they're describing with the person he thinks he is, just a mechanic who fixed things, who did his job, who happened to care more about results than regulations. Cooper walks over, puts a hand on his shoulder. "This is why I made you come. Not so they could thank you. So you could see what you actually accomplished instead of minimizing it." "I'm not minimizing." "You are. You've been minimizing it since the day Hayes landed and said 3 zeros. You keep calling it routine maintenance. Keep saying you just did your job. Keep pretending that what you did wasn't extraordinary." Cooper's voice drops. "But it was. It was the most extraordinary thing most of us will ever be part of. And you deserve to acknowledge that, to own it, to be proud of it." The evening continues. Stories flow like water, pilots, describing the first time they rolled their aircraft and felt instant response. The moment they realized they could win fights, they'd been losing the combat where the modification saved their lives in ways they can prove, and ways they'll never be certain of, but suspect anyway. Mechanics describing midnight installations, the fear of discovery, the satisfaction. When pilots came home, the collective decision to stay quiet and stay safe and take the secret to their graves if necessary. Around 2100 hours, Hayes stands, clinks his glass. "I want to read something." Helen Reeves, Danny's fiancée, his widow. She wrote this last month when I told her about tonight. He unfolds a letter. "Dear pilots and mechanics of the P-38 modifications. My Danny died August 3, 1943, doing what he loved with equipment he'd modified himself, because he couldn't bear watching friends die from preventable problems. I spent 2 years thinking his death was meaningless. Then Sergeant McKenna wrote to tell me Danny's observation had been implemented quietly and saved lives. Now, Captain Hayes tells me that Danny's idea evolved into a program that saved hundreds. My grief hasn't lessened. I still miss him every day. But knowing his death led to changes that prevented other deaths, knowing that his stubbornness and brilliance and refusal to accept defeat saved people he never met, that helps. That matters. So thank you. Thank you for honoring his memory by spreading his solution. Thank you for being brave enough to break rules he broke first. Thank you for making his death mean something. With gratitude and tears, Helen Reeves." The room is silent. Someone's crying. Several someones. McKenna realizes he's one of them. "We should create something," Weber says suddenly. "A memorial. Not official, can't be official, but something for us. Something that acknowledges what happened and who it happened to and why it mattered." "Like what?" Morrison asks. "A plaque. A monument. Something that says the truth even if the world never sees it." They discuss options. Settle on a solution, a small bronze plaque privately funded to be installed at Long Beach Airport where McKenna's garage sits. The inscription will read, "In memory of the mechanics and pilots who modified P-38 Lightning aircraft, August-December 1943. Their unauthorized innovations saved hundreds of lives. Their names remain unrecorded. Their courage remains unforgotten." Sometimes the most moral thing you can do is break the rules that are killing people. They'll fund it collectively, install it quietly, tell no one except each other, and once a year those who can will gather at the plaque and remember what they did when the world wasn't watching and regulations weren't enough and conscience demanded something more. November 1945. The plaque is installed at Long Beach Airport Gate 7, near the maintenance hangars, where small aircraft get serviced by mechanics who care more about keeping people alive than following procedures that don't account for reality. McKenna attends the installation with Cooper and Hayes, and 19 others, everyone who could make the trip on short notice. They stand in silence as the plaque is mounted. No speeches, no ceremony. Just acknowledgement that what they did mattered and deserves to be remembered, even if official history won't record it. After McKenna and Cooper walk the flight line. Small aircraft parked in rows. Cessnas and Pipers, and other civilian planes that will never see combat, but still need maintenance, still need care, still need people who understand that keeping humans alive is more important than following rules blindly. "You think anyone will ever know the full story?" Cooper asks. "Doubt it. Official records are sanitized, participants are scattered. Physical evidence was destroyed. In 20 years this'll be legend. In 50 years myth. In 100 forgotten completely." "That bother you?" McKenna is quiet for a moment. Then, "No, because the people who needed to survive survived. That's not myth or legend. That's real. And real matters more than remembered." Spoken like someone who's finally made peace with anonymity. Spoken like someone who understands that glory is for people who need external validation. "I don't need the world to know what I did. I just needed to do it. Everything else is extra." They reach the end of the flight line. Turn back. The plaque glints in afternoon sun, small, unobtrusive, easily missed unless you're looking for it. Which is perfect. Because the best victories aren't the ones everyone sees, but the ones that matter most to the people affected by them. "My son's getting better," Cooper says suddenly. "David. He's started talking more, sleeping through the night occasionally. Even smiled last week when I told him about the reunion about meeting the pilots whose lives I helped save." His voice thickens. "He said he was proud of me. Said maybe he survived because I helped shorten the war by some fraction, by helping win air superiority that led to faster victory. I don't know if that's true, but I choose to believe it." "It's true enough," McKenna says. "Truth doesn't have to be provable to matter. It just has to be believed by the people who need to believe it." Years pass. The participants scatter. Some thrive. Some struggle. Some die young from causes unrelated to war, but connected to it in ways that can't be measured. Stress trauma, the weight of carrying secrets, and unacknowledged achievements. Hayes becomes a commercial pilot. Flies 707s across the Pacific, occasionally looking down at New Guinea and remembering the airfield where a mechanic saved his life. Morrison opens a flight school, teaches young pilots about aircraft limitations and when to trust equipment and when to question it and how to survive when systems fail. Weber joins NASA, works on Mercury program, applies lessons learned from P-38 modifications to spacecraft design. The importance of field testing, the value of operator feedback, the understanding that engineers don't know everything and mechanics often know more. Cooper retires to Oregon. Spends his final years with David, who becomes a teacher like he wanted before the war, who teaches history and tells his students about mechanics who broke rules to save lives, even though he can't name them or prove their existence. McKenna stays in Long Beach, runs his garage, fixes engines. Occasionally pilots visit men and women who flew modified P-38s, who tracked him down through networks of former military personnel who want to shake his hand and say thank you one more time. He always welcomes them, always listens to their stories, always reminds them that what they did, trusting modified aircraft flying combat in equipment that regulations said was compromised, but reality said was improved, took as much courage as anything he did. 1963. McKenna is 49. The garage is thriving. He's hired 2 mechanics, young men, who remind him of himself at their age, eager to fix things, frustrated by inefficiency, willing to question conventional wisdom when conventional wisdom doesn't match reality. One afternoon, a customer brings in a car with brake problems. The young mechanic, Tommy, 22, Vietnam veteran, 3 months back from war, diagnoses the issue. Needs new brake lines, but if we replace just the lines without upgrading, the master cylinder problem will recur in 6 months. Manual says just replace the lines, the other mechanic says. Tommy shakes his head. Manual's wrong. I've seen this before. Trust me. McKenna watches the exchange, sees himself in Tommy. The frustration with regulations that don't account for reality, the certainty that there's a better way if someone's brave enough to implement it. Do what Tommy says, McKenna tells them. But document everything. Explain to the customer why we're exceeding the manual recommendation. Get their approval. Then do the work right instead of by the book. Tommy looks at him. You sure if something goes wrong? Then we fix it. But doing inadequate work because the manual says so isn't acceptable. We fix things right. Not by the book. Right. There's a difference. After the customer leaves satisfied with brakes that will last years instead of months, Tommy approaches McKenna. Can I ask you something? Sure. The war. You were a mechanic in the Pacific, right? I saw the photo on the wall. Yeah. You ever have to choose between following regulations and doing what you knew was right? McKenna is quiet for a long time. Then, once, maybe twice, turned out okay. What happened? I fixed what was broken, even though fixing it meant breaking rules. Even though breaking rules meant risking everything. But the alternative was watching good people die when I could prevent it. So I fixed it. And I'd do it again. Tommy nods slowly. In Vietnam, I modified my rifle. Unauthorized. Against regulations. But the standard configuration jammed in jungle humidity. Got soldiers killed. So I fixed it. Taught others to fix theirs. We all could have been court-martialed. But we all came home alive. You do what you did right. Yeah. Then you did what I did. Different war, same choice, same answer. McKenna puts a hand on his shoulder. Welcome to the club of people who understand that sometimes conscience matters more than regulations. 1983. McKenna is 69, retired. The garage sold to Tommy, who runs it with the same philosophy McKenna taught him. Fix things right, not by the book, and never accept that death is inevitable just because regulations say change is impossible. McKenna spends his days reading, gardening, occasionally visiting the plaque at Long Beach Airport that's now weathered and faded, but still readable to anyone who looks closely enough. One morning, a young woman knocks on his door, mid-20s, earnest expression, notebook in hand. Mr. McKenna. My name is Sarah Reeves. I'm Danny Reeves's grandniece. I'm writing a family history and I found letters mentioning you. Can we talk? McKenna invites her in, makes coffee, listens as she describes finding letters between Danny and Helen, finding Helen's letter from 1943, and McKenna's response, piecing together a story that official records don't acknowledge but family memory preserves. I want to write about what really happened, Sarah says. About Uncle Danny's modification. About you spreading it. About the lives saved. Will you tell me the truth? McKenna thinks about Cooper dead 5 years now. About Hayes, who died piloting a 707 that suffered mechanical failure and couldn't be saved by any modification. About the 87 pilots and 24 mechanics whose stories deserve to be told but can't be, because telling them requires admitting to crimes that might still carry consequences. I can tell you what matters, McKenna says finally. Your uncle figured out that P-38 control cables had excessive slack in tropical conditions. He modified his own aircraft. He died in combat, but his modification worked. Other mechanics found his solution and spread it. Hundreds of pilots survived who might not have otherwise. That's the truth. That's what matters. But the details? The details are dangerous. The details implicate people who might still face consequences. The details turn a story of courage into a legal liability. McKenna puts down his coffee. Write about Danny. Write about his insight and his bravery and his refusal to accept that pilots had to die from preventable problems. Write that his death led to changes even if you can't specify exactly what changes or who implemented them. That's enough. That's what he deserves. Sarah writes. The family history includes a chapter on Danny titled The Mechanic Who Became a Pilot Who Changed Aviation. It's imperfect and incomplete and missing crucial details. But it captures the essential truth: one man saw a problem, fixed it despite regulations, and saved lives through innovation that official channels wouldn't acknowledge until it was too late for him, but not too late for others. The history circulates among family members, reaches other P-38 veterans. Some contact Sarah with additional stories carefully worded, deliberately vague, protecting the guilty by refusing to specify who did what, when. The story grows. Not in official histories or military records, but in family memories and veteran networks and the oral traditions of people who know the truth and pass it down even when documentation fails. 1998. McKenna is 84. His hands shake from age now instead of emotion. He's outlived most of the mechanics, most of the pilots, most of the people who knew what really happened in August 1943 when a mechanic decided regulations mattered less than lives. One afternoon, he returns to Long Beach Airport. Gate 7. The plaque is still there, corroded, barely readable, scheduled for removal during upcoming renovations. McKenna traces the inscription with failing fingers. Remembers Hayes and Cooper and Danny Reeves and all the people whose names aren't on this plaque but should be. A young mechanic approaches, early 20s, airport maintenance uniform. You okay, sir? Just remembering. You read what this says. I wrote it. The young mechanic looks at him, at the plaque, back at McKenna, and you're one of them. One of the mechanics who... I'm the mechanic who couldn't watch good people die anymore. So I fixed what was broken. Even though fixing it meant breaking rules. Even though breaking rules meant risking everything. McKenna's voice is steady despite the tremor in his hands. And I'd do it again. Every time. Forever. The mechanic nods slowly. They're removing this next week. Renovation project. Said it's not official memorial, so it doesn't qualify for preservation. That's fine. It served its purpose. What purpose? Reminding the people who needed reminding that what we did mattered. The rest of the world doesn't need to know. Just us. And we remember. That's enough. McKenna walks away. Leaves the plaque to its fate. Because memory isn't bronze or stone or official recognition. Memory is people who survive telling their children who tell their children who tell history, even when history doesn't believe them. Memory is Sarah Reeves writing her uncle's story, even though details are missing. Memory is Tommy teaching young mechanics to fix things right instead of buy the book. Memory is Hayes looking down at New Guinea from 35,000 feet and thinking about the mechanic who saved him. Memory is Cooper's son David teaching students that sometimes courage means breaking rules that are killing people. Memory is McKenna, 84 years old, walking away from a plaque that's about to be destroyed. but leaving behind a truth that can't be erased, because truth isn't metal and stone. It's the space between what happened and what's remembered and what's passed forward to people who need to know that sometimes the most moral thing you can do is refuse to follow regulations that are wrong. Because in the end, that's what matters. Not the official records, or the medals, or the recognition. Just the knowledge that when it counted, when lives hung in the balance, some people chose conscience over career and lives over regulations and truth over convenience. And those people, named and unnamed, remembered and forgotten, acknowledged and ignored, changed the world in ways that can't be measured, but can be felt by every person who survived because someone cared enough to break the rules that needed breaking. They built air superiority with steel and aluminum and courage. But they built it with piano wire first. 12 cents worth of metal that was worth more than every regulation ever written. And the pilots who flew home remember. And remembering is how the truth survives, even when bronze corrodes and plaques get removed and official history moves on to other stories. Because some truths are too important to die just because nobody's willing to write them down.